All right. Welcome back to another edition of Beyond Recovery. And my guest today is from across the pond, as we say here in Canada. His name is Ian, and he's from Darlington, which is just outside of Newcastle. So, Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I
It's an
really appreciate.
honor.
Oh man, the honor's all mine. We were discussing it before we hopped on here. This is your first podcast, so this is pretty cool, man.
This is,
Yeah,
yeah.
really cool. So I'm again honored that you're the first. It happens to be my show, and it's a. I've been very much enjoying this. I've been doing it for about a month. I've been podcasting for like 5+ years, but specifically this show for about a month. So you're one of the I think the 6th or 7th guests. So that's cool. So I've been very much enjoying talking with folks like yourself that have really transformed their lives. Not only have they maintained a sobriety, which is obviously incredibly fantastic as a foundation, but you've also gone that extra mile, so to speak, and you've really transformed your body through health and wellness, specifically working out, nutrition, things like that. So we're going to dive into that. But before we do, let's go back to the very beginning. What was your origins with alcohol? A little bit of background. Like, was it in your family? What were family gatherings like? Just a little bit of like origin story as far as you with your relationship with alcohol, please, Ian.
Yeah. So I grew up in what we would class as a council estate. So I come from a very working class family. Um, and from as long back as I can remember, I always felt that I didn't fit in with my family. And I always felt like I was different. I'm the youngest of three. I've got an older brother and sister. And my mum and dad, they're still together. And my mum and dad did the best that they could. My brother and sister brought a lot of troubles to the house from a very young age. And I'd seen that, and it was very quickly put on to me that I was the good child because they had the police coming to the door a lot. And this is like going back 30 years. My sister had a son very early at 14. She was 14-year-old when she had my first nephew, which, I mean, obviously I was 9 at the time, so I couldn't comprehend how big of a deal that was, especially 30 years ago. And there was lots of different things, like with my brother, he was really bad, and he himself suffers now with drugs. And I was definitely always labeled like that good child, and I was actually told that I was the Saviour, which from a very young age I then took that on as though that was my job to then, what I didn't know at the time, which I would kind of try to do for everybody, to be that person. But when I was really young, I can always remember that I felt as though my parents didn't want me, or that they didn't love me, which was nothing through what they'd done. But if I went to an after school activity and they were supposed to pick me up at 4 o'clock, if I came outside, if they weren't there, I was in like floods of tears, thinking that they weren't coming. They decided they didn't want me anymore. And I have no clue what. I don't know if it was just because I was so different to my brother and sister. And then when I was actually about 15, I paid for a full birth certificate because I was convinced I was adopted. I wasn't. Spoiler. My mum and dad are my biological parents.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd always had that feeling as though I didn't belong, and I didn't. When I was younger, it's not until recently, but when I was young, I thought it was just growing up gay in the 80s. And obviously, I didn't fit in with my male friends, and I had more in common with the girls, but I didn't really, it wasn't like you couldn't hang out with them because then people would have realized. But in terms of alcohol, it was very much always around me, but I actually didn't like alcohol. I didn't like the taste of it. When we used to go out as kids, like to the parks, which we do on Fridays and Saturdays, like when I was at school. So maybe from the age of 13 onwards, we'd all go, like all of the people from school and friends would all go and meet at the park and drink. I actually used to pour mine out because I didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so I didn't like the taste of alcohol. I didn't like alcohol. And then I went to a party when I was about 15. It was a friend's party, and he had it at like a workman's club. And I was introduced to vodka, and somebody had brought a bottle of vodka and they poured it in the cork, and I can remember it as clear as day. And when I tasted that vodka, it was just like something just lit up in me, and that was my chosen drink throughout everything. And since then, it gave me this like confidence as though I did fit in. So then I started using it for that. Especially because even like going for nights out when I was about 16, 17, which you could do back then. I never liked it. I didn't like those situations. I never really, like I said from a young, I never felt like I fitted in. I didn't feel as though I fitted in when I went for nights out. It wasn't mine. So I just used alcohol. To kind of mask it, it kind of take the edge off. Then it gave me the confidence, and then it just became a lot bigger. But yeah, when I was younger, I didn't actually like it. I started later on. Well, I say later on, 15. I don't think 15 is
Right.
really later on.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But not heavily drinking until like into my 20s, which I would then kind of do what I thought was what the normal was, just the binge drinking on weekends. So Friday, Saturday, and heavy drinking. And then, yeah, I'd got into my 20s. I think I was in my 20s and I actually stopped drinking for a while because I was drinking a lot and I'd got bad. But I didn't think I was an alcoholic at that time. I actually, even when I stopped this time, I didn't think that I was, because I had in my head an idea of what an alcoholic was, and that
Right.
wasn't me.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I'd stopped in my 20s. I think I was like mid 20s, maybe late 20s, for about 2.5, 3 years. And then started drinking again. And then obviously I think the next time I went back on, it just kind of picked up and got a lot more aggressive. And then it was when I was in like my 30s when it started to get really bad.
Perfect time to just take a pause, and we'll go through some of the topics that you brought up, because yeah, definitely, like the thoughts of not feeling in, the idea that alcohol can be this go-to as far as like, okay, it, like you say, takes the edge off, and it allows you to have this like sense of confidence about yourself that as we move along, we know it's inside us, but we don't know how to access it. And so that's the gateway is then the alcohol. So definitely relate with that. I think a lot of folks will be able to relate with that. What was it, just even back to like your family life, like being labeled as the savior of the family? Like, do you find that yourself, the behavior as a reaction of this label of being the savior, you kind of alluded to it, but it's like, were you sort of like a people pleaser? Like, were you putting your other people's needs ahead of your own at that point? Because you're just like, oh, I have this expectation of me as being the good child. So as a result, I have to fix problems. Like, was there any of that came up?
Yeah, I was definitely, I mean, I've always been a people pleaser, but when I was a child, I did. And I seen a lot of potential that when I was a little kid that a child shouldn't be exposed to. And just in terms of like with my brother in particular, of how bad he was. And I think my mum and dad, when I was the complete opposite of them, and I was so good, and I was always in on time, and my room was kept clean, and just all of like the standard stuff what kids can do. And then when I was labeled that, that's how I would always get the attention from my parents. So it was very much put on me. Like I seen what the grief they had from my brother, and my sister, in particular. She got older, and obviously then she moved out. When she had her child when she was 16. But yeah, it was definitely put on me that I was a savior, and I took that on, as in it was my job to make my parents happy. That was my role.
Yeah.
And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, it was a big role, and it was something that I've definitely discovered more so since getting sober. I can honestly say that now where I'm at, it's the first time in my life, and I'm 40 this year, that I'm actually being my 100% self. I know who I am, I know what I'm about, and that's that. But yeah, I was a people pleaser for a lot of years, and the only way that I can describe it is I was a very good chameleon. I fitted into whatever
Mm,
situation I was in because I could
yeah.
adapt very quickly. And if I was with a group of lads, I could hear what they were talking about, and I could very quickly become that. And it just
Mm,
resulted in me not really knowing who I was, because I didn't really stand like for anything. I was just doing what I thought was expected, what people expected. Not even that they expected it of me, it's what
right.
I thought they expected of me,
Boom. Wow.
because that's what I thought from a very, very young age.
What a realization. And just the way you articulate it is like, man, that's wow, powerful stuff. Like you say, it's like you're acting in the way that you think that they're hoping that you react
Mm,
as a part. Yeah, for sure. What a realization. Very powerful.
mm,
And I noticed in your bio, like that you'd typed over before we had the interview, you talk a lot about and jumping ahead, but just some foreshadowing for something that we're going to talk about is you are much better with healthy boundaries now. And so we'll get into that. And that's, I'm sure, what's grown out of this, behavior that you had learned as a child, right? So now
yes.
and that's about you accepting and respecting and loving yourself in the truest sense is now you have these healthy boundaries. But jumping ahead, that's a little bit of foreshadowing. Before that, it's also interesting. It's fascinating how many people initially hate the taste, whether it's beer or whatever they
Mm,
try, and yet you continue to do it. It's kind of like smoking cigarettes in a way too, right? You're like, the first few cigarettes are horrible. They taste bad. They kill your taste buds. It's like they give you this massive head rush, yet you continue to do it. So it's kind of fascinating that way that you initially did not like alcohol. But of course, there's the one that always seems to find you and resonate with you, that being vodka for you, right? So that's always that's a little bit interesting as
mhm.
well. Let's talk a little bit about, before we get into this into your 30s here specifically, like as we're getting closer to the timeline that we're on now, let's go back to that 2.5 or 3 years of sobriety that you did have in your 20s. And what did that look like? What were you, filling your time with? How challenging was that for you? Just a little bit more unpacking on
Um,
that.
yeah, it was actually quite. If I'm more honest, it was quite a easy thing to stop drinking, um, because I'd become really crippled with anxiety at the time,
Mm.
and I thought that I was drinking and killing myself. I really
Oh.
did believe that. I went for like tests and things, and it turned out that I only had IBS, but I was convinced that I'd really done damage to myself through my drinking. And I think what seemed to make it worse when I was drinking is that I'd recently just moved out with my boyfriend at the time, my husband now. It was our first time living out. So, of course, when you first moved out, we were having all of our friends around and
Mm.
partying. And
Hmm.
again, not ever thinking that there was an issue with alcohol, just doing what you do in your 20s, partying.
Yeah.
And I got really bad with anxiety to the point where I was worried about eating food.
Mm.
Um, and I'd lost weight. So then I thought that that was to do with the fact with whatever was going on inside of me, that I'd done
Mm.
something and I was dying, not that I wasn't eating. So I was really crippled with anxiety and eating. So the drinking I didn't really focus on. And then after a couple of years, and then it just came that one night, one day, I just had a drink again, and then that was that. I was back. I was back to it. But yeah, so during that first time, I didn't really give much thought to the I'm not drinking alcohol, because I didn't think that that was necessarily a problem. I thought I was really poorly, but I wasn't.
Gotcha.
I went for tests and I just had some IBS.
Gotcha. It's amazing that, like, it's that seems to be one of the main motivators of everybody, is like the actual health. Like when you're listening to your body, it's just like, oh man, okay, that's
Yeah.
always like a very common thread with everybody. Now, just you'd mentioned as soon as you had the one drink and it was back, dude. I can completely resonate with that, because like that was the same for me. I had about a little over 3 years sober, and I had a shot of tequila and like a Corona at one of my friend's wedding, and it was just like boom, just like 3 years,
Mm,
3 months, just I was right back where I was. All this like self-development that I've been doing, I had the impression that I could, I could have a drink now. It's all good. I'm cured. And it's just like, it's amazing. How was that for you? Like when you said, just to unpack that statement a little bit more, you said you had that one drink and it was just like, it's on again. What was it? Was it literally just that instantaneous? What do you remember what the drink was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a vodka. It was vodka. It was
A
always
vodka.
vodka.
Yeah.
Always vodka. There
Yeah.
was never anything else.
Right.
I never cheated on vodka. I was very loyal to vodka. And
Right. Right.
um, yeah, it was having a vodka at a party, and again, because at the time I never thought I had a problem with alcohol back then. And when I had it, it was that same taste and feeling as what I had back when I very first discovered vodka. And it was just
Mm,
that kind of, when you have it, and it was just that,
yeah.
like,
Okay.
it was that nice moment, um, which is obviously a fake moment. But yeah, so then I'd started again and didn't, again, it still didn't think that it was an issue with the vodka. I knew that health wise I was fine, and I didn't think that I had a problem with alcohol. It's strange when we get into what my drinking was like and I tell the stories. Now I look back and think, how did you never know like you had a problem? Like I was
Mm,
completely deluded. Like
mm.
not only was I lying to everybody else, I was clearly doing a good job of lying to myself.
Right. Right. And you'd mentioned another statement that kind of that stuck out to me. Like you said, you had a vision or like an idea of what an alcoholic is
Hmm.
or looks like, and you're not that. Or you at the time you're like, I don't match that. So what exactly was that? I'm kind of curious. What was your idea of like an alcoholic?
So I had in my head that an alcoholic was somebody who had lost everything. They didn't have any family, they had no friends, living on the streets, drinking out of brown paper bags,
Yeah. Right.
couldn't
Okay.
hold down a job,
Yeah.
lost everything. That's in my head what an alcoholic was. And because I wasn't ever there, I was saying I wasn't. I'm obviously now aware that I was lying to myself to try and
Mm,
convince myself that I wasn't. And I also
mm.
know that that is not where you don't go to bed one day and wake up there.
Right.
That
Okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
happen like that overnight. It's
Gotcha.
steps.
Yes.
And when my drinking got really bad, I was definitely projected onto that path, whereas that's where it was going. On paper, I am one of the most blessed and luckiest men alive. I've got the world's best husband, I've got the best friends, the best family, I've got a good job. But when I was drinking, none of it made a difference. I couldn't see any of it. It didn't. And all of these people and things were just blockers. They were just stopping me doing this one thing that is all I could was consumed by, and all I wanted to do. And all of these people were just in my way, stopping me being at home drinking on my own. Because it wasn't a social thing anymore. I'd gone way past that.
I got you. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get into that. This is a good time to get into this, like the sort of the second phase where it's at this point, it's really turned on you, that your relationship with alcohol, specifically vodka. You're drinking by yourself. Like you say, you're like, you can't see how fortunate of a life you're leading because all you're doing is being obsessed, very narrow minded with this, as addictions are. It's a very like
Mm.
narrow window of things that bring you joy, and that's often just the substance itself, that being vodka. So what was your like turning point moment with all of this, if there was one, or is there a few? What did that that turnaround period in your life look like before you ended up with this sobriety?
I knew, I've known for a long time, and I first got in touch with AA back in 2017. I'd emailed them and I'd said that I was worried about my drinking, and I'd been drinking every day for the last 2 years, and I was worried about just stopping. But I didn't actually do anything. I just carried on. I wasn't at that point where I, I knew I had a problem, but I don't think I was ready to address it and actually stop.
Mm,
And I was drinking up to a litre bottle of vodka a day, weekends in excess,
mm,
and I had alcohol hid all around my house. I never went anywhere without a hip flask. If I went to ice skating or a niece's or nephew's party, I would take my alcohol with me. If I didn't lie and say I was poorly, so I could stay home and drink. I had alcohol hid in the cupboards, so if people came to my house and I was making a cuppa, I could drink. I had plans on which shops I would go to in my area. I would rotate them, so I didn't go to the same shop every day. Still, was not even aware that I had a drinking problem throughout all of this. I was thinking
Right.
this was a normal way of drinking, like how
Right.
deluded I was. And I'd skip like to go to like the different shops so that they didn't. And I'd done that because one day I'd went in and the guy had said, "Oh, you've come for your vodka." So I was thinking, oh God, like they've can't, like I've come that much. They know, because obviously I was going every day. And then my drinking had then led to me also using drugs, which is not something that until now I've actually spoke about in any sort of public way, only for the simple reason that I feel as though the drugs are secondary to the alcohol. I would never look for drugs unless I was drunk.
I got you.
So I don't feel as though I have any issues with with drugs that I need to kind of focus that on. My primary goal was always the alcohol when I'd got to that point. And I think within my family, there is my brother who's had issues with drugs. I also wanted to protect my family from not necessarily coming straight out and having issues with alcohol and drugs. And then my in-laws as well are not really exposed to that. So I was just trying to contain exactly what was going on, and I didn't want to overwhelm them all so much with everything when I really just needed help with I was at the point where I needed help with the alcohol. But I was doing a lot of cocaine as well. And then when we all went into the first lockdown with COVID, this is when it kind of went from where I was drinking a lot and I knew I was in that denial to all of a sudden I was locked away and I was on my own and I got what I wanted. And sometimes you have to be careful, because when everybody was stripped away from me and I was on my own and I was drinking and doing drugs, and it was just so, I just got completely lost and consumed in it. And I wanted a way out, but I couldn't find that way out. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get help. I didn't know how to tell my friends and family. I felt as though I'd built up this persona, and then to actually say that I'm not that person, that I was going to get lost, like that kind of that savior person, that there was going to be, I don't know, like a clink in my armor, that I wasn't this perfect person that I'd projected. And I'd got to the point where I'd used to go to bed every night and just, on the nights I could remember, if I didn't black out, I'd just hope that I wouldn't wake up the next day. Like my drinking had just got that bad. And I just, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself physically, mentally, nothing. I didn't like the way that I was as a person with, in particular, my best friend, who I've had for many years. And because I knew she was a blocker, I was really negative and nasty and argumentative towards her, because I was trying to push her away. And I did the same with my husband. And I didn't like the person that I was, but I didn't know where to go or what to do, of how to get help. And it just all got out of control. And I'd also racked up a lot of debt, which I was trying to hide from, because obviously to give you the alcohol and drugs for free, you have to pay for them. So
Right.
there was a
Yep.
lot of debt that came along with that. So it was a lot to, I think when COVID happened, where I was saying I had in like, you don't just wake up an alcoholic, as in at the end part where you have lost everything. That's a slow projection. I think when COVID happened, it kind of sped mine up a bit and give me a shock and a reality. And I just felt like I'd came to the point where I was that low and desperate, that I was at a crossroads, and I was either going to go down one way and actually be honest and open and ask for help and try and get that help, or I was going to go down the way of just drinking and myself to death. And I can remember it that was going to happen, and I'd stopped it was Friday the 16th of October. My husband, who I have been with 20 years this year,
Wow.
which obviously in gay terms is about 3,000 years. So And he works he does 4 on 4 off, and he starts at like 2 in the afternoon till like 3 in the morning.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So there was a lot of time where I was on my own where he wasn't there. And I just thought, like, I'm gonna have to do it. And it was on a Friday night, and I'd done it, and it was sort of like the feelings of just being alone, like going through that dry out stage was, yeah. But we did. But yeah, so the drinking had got really bad. And then after I'd done, once he came back off, so he was at work the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then on the Tuesday I told him, and I'd opened up and confessed everything about the drugs, the debt, the drinking. I got all of my bottles that I had hid around the house, and then went to and then told the rest of my friends and family.
Wow. So that's quite the story. I want to address a few things as we did with the first segment there. Thanks for being so honest with that. And especially about talking about the drug use, which you say has been very like you say, it is you've acknowledged it as secondary, but it's still part of the story. So for you to
absolutely
admit it in a public forum, like, takes a lot of courage. So thank you for doing that, and thanks for showing up for that. You know what, you spoke about this crossroads thing, so it became very apparent you're going to go one way or the other. There's no turning back. There's no so it's gonna, you got to go one way or the other. And you know what, and when you kind of framed it as well with your your husband working these shifts where it allows you to have all this extra time, and there is a degree of there's this ability for you to have almost a second life independent of your relationship with him. And as far as I think the gap between what we think we're hiding from people and what they know, it's probably a little more like they know a little bit more than what we think, but the same token, they don't know everything. Right. So that's how I've always viewed it anyway. So I'm like, I always thought when I was drinking, I'm like, I'm pulling a fast one on everybody.
Yeah.
And then people tell me later, like, no, man, we knew, like, we didn't know it was that bad, but we knew you were pretty effed up. I was like, oh man, I thought I was like fooling everybody. Right. And I know exactly what you mean as far as like going from like liquor store to liquor store, doing the little tour around so they don't don't think that you're doing it every day. So that's that story. I was like, oh yeah, that's me. So, but yeah, like it's and the whole COVID thing, like that definitely put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. There was a lot of people that got sober during COVID, which is actually a very positive thing. If you're going to say something positive came out of the pandemic, that's because literally just the reasons that you're saying. There's the idea that you wanted to be isolated for your drinking, and then all of a sudden that's all you have is isolation, and it really expedited the whole thing. So I commend you on your self-awareness. You have a very very knowledgeable and a lot of depth to your story as far as being able to like look back and reflect and go, okay, there was this. And so you have a great level of self-awareness. So I commend you for that. So you know what, now we've gotten to that stage where like you've basically come clean. How did that look? Was that very dramatic? Was it like graded with acceptance? How was it when you had to come out and basically tell friends, family, husband, hey, this is what's going on with me? What did that look like for you?
Well, the first time I came out was bad enough. I wasn't when I came out as gay. I thought that was it. I was done.
Right,
I'm out.
right.
That's all. I don't need to do this ever again.
Sure.
And then here I am having to come out again. And it was scary because I'd felt like I'd let everybody down. And anybody who has done recovery knows how fragile you are when you first get sober. I've spent so many years blocking out all emotions that I never ever really experienced. I just reacted in the way that I thought that I should. So when my husband was doing those 4 on 4 off, I pretended I was sad, but I was happy. Because it allowed me to drink. And then when he was off on the 4 days, that was his weekend, so we could drink together. And
gotcha.
then when he was back at work, I could pretend I wasn't drinking and I was back being sad that he was working. So there was a lot of times like that where emotions that I should feel, I wasn't. And then all of a sudden, I was just hit with all of these emotions. And everything was saying to drink again, to block it out, to stop it. But I'd owned up to it. So I had a lot of remorse and guilt, and I was very emotional. And I can remember I was sat on my kitchen table. I don't know why I was sat on my kitchen table, but I was sat on my kitchen table, not on a chair like a normal person. And I told him, and he was amazing, and has been. There is no way, hands down, that I could have done this without my husband, without Andrew. No way at all. He's been an absolute rock, and everybody, there's a lot of people that have been there to help and support and have rallied round, but he's lived with it 24/7. He's seen when I've had a complete meltdown and cried my eyes out because there was too many glasses on a glass shelf, where I was just an absolute wreck at the start. I couldn't process thoughts or anything. So I have a lot of memory of it because I did a lot of journaling at the start. So I've got it
Mm.
all wrote down of days of feelings, and like a genuine concern was like, am I a fun person? Like in
Yeah.
drink, I could
Yeah.
be, but am I actually fun? Like, will I laugh again? Like
I got you.
that was like genuine. Like I had genuine concerns
Mm.
for that. Now
Yeah.
I know I'm a hoot. Like I'm all right, even
Yeah.
sober. Like I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so he responded amazing. And then my best friend, who would we very much have a very codependent relationship. We're very dysfunctional. We get it. We know it. We've stopped trying to explain it now. And I rang her and told her, um, and I think she was taken aback, the same as Andrew, but they'd done what you'd said, whereas they were like, well, we knew, like we didn't know to the extent, but we knew that you
Mm.
like to have a drink.
Yeah.
Um, as did everybody in my life. And then when I told Andrew, he was like, we'll fix it, we'll do it, we'll sort it out, we'll do it together. Like, what do we need to do? And when I told my best friend, she was great on the phone, and then we'd ended the phone call, and then she rang me back and she was like, I just want you to know that I love you, and I think that it's incredibly brave, and I'll help you in any way that I can.
Brilliant.
And then the rest were the same. Family rallied round. I was very lucky that I hadn't done any permanent damage,
Mm.
um, and that the things that I had done, um, which there's people that could have never forgive me way before I forgave myself. Like their
Oh,
forgiveness came and they give it to me when I kept hold of it for a lot longer than what they did.
wow. So the power of forgiveness.
Yes.
That's a big one. I love it. So definitely shout out to to Andrew, your husband, as
Yeah.
well as your best friend there. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. What was it? If you don't mind.
She's Jenna. She's
Oh,
called Jenna.
Janice. So shout out to both of those. You need those, those people closest to you
Yeah.
when you're turning the corner here. So shout out to both of them. That's amazing, and congrats on 20 years for you guys. That is amazing in itself. There's seems to be 5 to 7 years, and people kind of start getting tired of each other these days. And there's divorces and all this other stuff. So good on you guys for that. That's amazing. So that's super cool. So
Thank you.
here we go. We've gone through the darkest time. Let's get into the light now, the fun stuff. And it's not all, it's not all fun. There's some obviously some, like you said, there's these flood of emotions that are coming up now. There's this extra, energy that instead of hiding, this energy that was going into hiding and living almost this double life, you're gonna find what are you going to convert this energy into? And so, it's going to be a great time to bring up to anybody that gives you a follow on Instagram. Man, your body transformation has been incredible. And just that you're putting on, I imagine a lot of your energy went into going to the gym, but yeah, fill us in with this last 18 plus months of sobriety.
Yeah.
What have been the ups, the downs, the lessons learned, the feelings that you've been working through? Yeah, give us the rundown, man.
There's so, like, honestly, to try and put into words, it's been the craziest roller coaster of a ride ever. But I'm definitely at the point now where I'll take it. Like I would like from where I'm at now. And I always say that I know I'm so protective of my sobriety.
Mm.
It is the most important thing to me. Because I know there's definitely a relapse that lives within me. I know that
Ooh,
100%.
yeah.
But there's not a recovery. I can't do this again. Like, no
Oh,
way. It's
okay.
been the hardest thing I've ever done. So I'm very, very, very protective over anything that can jeopardize it. And I also am very much aware that nobody, so within an area where they've got the people, the places, the things, none of that has the power to make me drink. Nobody has that power to make me drink. But
Mm.
I will use something as an excuse to sabotage myself. I know that would be my downfall. So I'm
Ah,
very protective, and it's took a long time within recovery to realize this. But when I first got sober, my energy went into painting. I painted my
nice.
full kitchen, the floor. I painted the fridge. I painted the
Painted the
washing
fridge.
machine. I painted the I painted the
Okay.
fridge. I painted the freezer, the dryer.
Wow.
I
Okay. Yeah.
painted everything. Like, and um, I painted my stairs. So I just done anything that would distract me, and I spent a lot of time outside, um, getting like fresh airs and going for walks.
Mm.
And then I discovered um, the power for taking control of your, like, the health and nutrition side.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that was a game changer, absolute game
Yeah.
changer. And I think that I definitely use that now for, because I still get the cravings. And it's been definitely a very rocky road. It's not been plain sailing. And when I'm in those bad times, it's nutrition and exercise that has helped me. When I can go to the gym,
Mm.
when I can go for a run, when I can do something that helps with those cravings. And the whole point of me getting sober was that I wanted my life back. I wanted to socialize with friends and family. And that's why I went public with my story, because I had a lot of anxiety over what happens when I go to these places and people say, have a drink, and I can't drink. And then,
Yeah.
will I have a drink? Like, and it was I was focused too much on what would happen when I was at these events or at
Ah.
parties.
Yeah.
So the only thing that thought that I could do was to take that power away and just share it and put it out there to the world and friends and family who I could potentially, who are not the immediate, but would then see me at parties, or would then understand that I'm not drinking and the reasons as to why, and to remove the stigma of that you should be ashamed that you've got a drinking problem, or that you're an alcoholic, or you're a recovering alcoholic, because there is no stigma to it. We shouldn't have that stigma to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So health and fitness definitely came in and played a massive key part. As did AA. I went to AA at the
Mm.
start.
Yep.
I don't go to AA now, but that just because of my whole life, where I've always done what other people thought. Oh, I've always done what I've expected people thought I should do.
Right.
I was doing the same in AA, and it wasn't becoming my journey. I was thinking, right, I'll be the best recovering alcoholic they've ever seen, and I'll follow the 12 steps,
Oh.
and I'll do this,
Yeah.
and then they'll
Yeah.
think I'm good. And I was like, nah,
Yeah.
I'm not. I can't, because I've built my recovery around whatever is took away from me. I can do something else as a coping tool, because you can't ever take me away. And I'm the
Yeah.
one that's keeping myself sober, whereas other things can be took away. And I don't want those things to just be whipped away from me, and then maybe stood there with my pants down, like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, what do I do?
Right. Right.
Um, and then I used nutrition when I went to, so in family parties, when there was big gatherings, that I would stick to a healthy nutritional plan. So I had that control, and I could focus on that as opposed to focusing on the alcohol, which when I first went and being around alcohol, I was petrified. Like, I was scared to death. And
Yeah.
I was like, I was just staring at it, and I witnessed it everywhere I went. And I also went to therapy, and I still go to therapy. I started when I was about
Sorry, Ian, you froze up there. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me? Ian, can you still hear me?
Am I back?
There we go. Yes. I'm not sure what happened. You guys just kind of cut out. You did like the freeze frame thing. I'm like, oh, he's holding on to this thought for a long time. I'm like, wow, he's really thinking about this. And then I'm like, oh wait, he froze.
Yeah. I don't know what
Yeah.
happened there. I just
Oh,
disappeared.
yeah, it's all good. I guess, technology works when it's great, or great when it works, rather.
Yeah.
We are like halfway across the world from each other. So,
That's true. That's
it
true.
will happen. So I believe you were in the middle of something about nutrition. Man, I can't.
So
Yeah.
when it was so there was a lot of family gatherings and parties where it was big occasions, like my sister-in-law's 50th birthday, my brother-in-law's 50th birthday, my father-in-law's 70th birthday, and these were all within my first year of my sobriety.
Oh, wow.
And there were big parties and there was lots of alcohol, and a way of me, there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot that I've definitely learned, and one of the things was just I had to have that element of control when I was at these parties. So I could feel as though I was out of control with the alcohol, but on the food side, when it was served, I was completely cut off. That I was eating like my healthy stuff, so I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And I had that. So obviously it's very different now. Now I can just let myself go and enjoy all of the good food, not the drink, but the good food.
Yes.
But yeah, so health, fitness definitely became a huge thing, and it helps with, obviously it helps with mental health, but also with the cravings. And then especially when it was, I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, sadly I'd lost my dog and we had to have him put to sleep, and
Sorry to hear that.
everything in my body just screamed to drink. And then I really struggled because I was wanting to grieve for him, but as soon as I was letting myself grieve, this drink was coming back in saying drink, 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 and then I was getting really mad at myself that I couldn't that I couldn't grieve my dog that I wanted to without having this alcohol thing still there.
Yeah.
And that's where exercise came in. I went and I exercised, and it definitely massively helps mine with my cravings and the mental health, and just to get my thoughts back in the right process.
Yeah, that's great. And let's talk a little bit about the mental health side of it, because there is, when people think going to the gym, the first thing obviously to think of is like external, presentation, right? Which is great, as you've mentioned as well. It's like, it's in the pre-interview you mentioned, sort of like the cherry on top is like, but in behind the scenes is almost like an overlooked side of it, because it's almost like, well, over here anyways, like in North American culture, it's almost like very secondary. It's all about like how you look, and and it's like you don't really champion the mental health side of exercise. But for me, that's like my number one takeaway. As soon as I started going to the gym, and I was similar to you, as soon as I got sober, my main addiction became going to the gym. I go to the gym every day because I love the brain chemistry, that it kind of has a similar dopamine effect, or whatever. Maybe I'm not a scientist by any means. It made me feel good. How about that? So I would keep on that. And like, I was like, man, that I love what it does for my mental health first and foremost. And to your point, I'm very much of the same, not putting words in your mouth, but the secondary byproduct is like, I'm starting to look pretty good too. You know what I mean? So let's get into a little bit of that. What has it specific? What is it? How would you describe it specifically as far as working out, complementing your mental health?
So I've always said that I'm aware that I've got there's a physical transformation, and I know that, and I'm not trying to downplay that or say that I'm not proud of it, because I very much am. I've completely changed my body physically, but that is completely secondary. If you would have met me 19 months ago to see me as I am now, you wouldn't recognize the person that I am from within inside, the way that I see the world, the way that I see myself, the progress that I've made with my own mental health, the way that I've put in where I'd said the power of saying no. I'm not people pleasing. I'm just living
Mm,
my true authentic life. People who love it, that's great. People who don't, that's also great, because I'm
yeah.
not doing it for either one or the other. I'm doing it to try and get my life back on track so that I can be the happiest and healthiest version of myself. And the transformation of the physical is just the cherry on the cake, that's also happened. But that's not why I don't go to the gym to look that a certain way. Obviously, I enjoy working out, I enjoy lifting weights, but I switch it up. I think it's when you do exercise, it's what you need to do in order to help your mental health. If you're not a runner and you don't get any enjoyment out of it, don't go out running, or don't go on a treadmill and try and run 7 miles. Do
Yeah.
something that you enjoy, and then you
Right.
get the whatever they are in your brain that
Yeah.
releases
Yeah.
those feel goods, the ooh
Yeah.
ahs, like that's what we want. Like that's what
Yeah. Yeah.
I get from the exercise. But yeah, just the whole process, the whole way that I think this journey that I've been on, I have completely changed my mindset on everything in terms of how I look at life, how I look at family, how I look at friends, how I look at things that are important and not important. And that all came from my sobriety, which is why I'm so protective of it.
Mm,
There's so much good that's come from it, and there's still bad, but people who don't have drinking problems or drunk problems have good and bad days. Everybody has good
right.
and bad days.
Yep.
It's just sometimes I'm not trying to make us out to be a little bit having those extra bad days, but when you add that on to the top of when you're having a bad day, that you then have those struggles that are always with you, it does make it a bit harder. And sometimes I get frustrated that even though I'm coming up 19 months, not one day has went by in those 19 months where I haven't had a day off from thinking about alcohol. I still think about
Right.
it, just in a different way. And I wish
Sure.
that I could have that day off and just have that quietness where I don't have to worry about it. But I would rather take that over where I was.
Over the
100%.
alternative. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So I get the impression just from talking to you, like, again, you're very self-aware. Yeah, I get the impression that you're a very cerebral, like you get in your own head quite a bit, right? Do you have a
Yeah, I do.
analysis and just, okay, yeah, I kind of get that from you. So I'm glad that you have done the mental and the mindset work to be able to relax that, because it seems like it could have been a pattern of behavior that would have just run amok. And that what I'm speaking is like the patterns that came from your childhood of the people pleasing and all
Yeah.
that. So you were able to get your power back, or just get your power like you never, perhaps you never had it to begin with. So you're able to actually,
No.
accomplish that. So man, huge props to you on that. You mentioned the power of no. So we alluded to it earlier, the foreshadowing I had, boundaries. How did
Yes.
boundaries come up for you? Was it a practice? Is this something that you're still practicing? Was it like a book you read? How did the
Yeah.
boundaries come out that you're like, okay, boom, this is going to, like you say, you're protective. So I'm assuming that these boundaries are then your protection of yourself, your sobriety, the new you essentially, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it was hard because I thought by saying no, that would make people not like me.
Mm,
And then I would take it really personally. But I'm not saying no to be a dick. I'm saying no for a reason. So the boundaries first initially came to when I was at these parties, or if it was even like it's something as simple as Christmas. When you first I got sober in the October, my first Christmas was an absolute nightmare. Like
mm,
being around everybody, because I don't want everybody to be side-eyeing me or trying to hide their drinks, or but
mm,
then I don't want to be around the drinks. And there was
right.
a lot, like I very much got into my own head about a lot of things. So the boundaries came where, okay, I'll go, but all I will do is if it becomes too much, I'll leave. I'll go.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm just setting that out there straight away. And I told that to some of my close family and my friends, and I went over that because at the start, when I first got sober, they would kind of look at me and ask me what they should do. And I'm like, I'm over here in the dark. I don't even really know what I'm doing. I can't tell you what to do. Like, I have no
Sure.
clue.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I got to the point where I was like, I just don't want you to do anything. You carry on. You don't have a problem with alcohol. You carry on drinking the way that you drink. You do what you do you.
Yeah.
And all I need is your support, where if I don't come to something, or I come and I leave, I just need your support to say, we understand why, and just leave me be. If I need anything else, I'll let you know. But
Yeah.
don't. And it took a while, especially with Andrew, because he was very much worried about having a drink where I was. And it took a while to explain, I don't need to see alcohol to think about alcohol. Like, it's there all the time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you having that drink in front of me isn't going to make me snatch it out your hand and have a drink, because the
Yeah.
reality is, if I was to start drinking again, I would do it in secret. Like, I wouldn't be out there,
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
that didn't, so it was a lot. So that's where kind of like the boundaries came from. And then the power of saying no came from, if I felt as though I was really in a bad place and I was struggling, that I just wouldn't go to these things because it felt as though it was damaging to me. And in particular, if it was something that I didn't feel as though I was safe, and that has come, and by saying no, that's cost me some of my closest relationships. But
Yeah.
I can't carry that. That's not on me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Hey.
doing the best that I can to be
Yeah.
the better person. And if that's not for you, that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I can't change that.
It's great, man. That's awesome. I love the conviction. Like you have
Mhm.
it's like, it's okay. This is, and that's what boundaries are. Boundaries are very
Yeah.
binary. It's like, it's, you have to be black and white. There can't be some gray area, because that's when things can kind of sneak in, and you know what I mean? And the last thing you need is like more, more thoughts of worrying about people, or like other behaviors that you had been exposed to growing up, that would potentially lead you down the path you don't want to go down. So one last question for you, man. I've loved this story. Thank you so much for your time today. I want to actually
You're
have a,
welcome.
because I would love to do a secondary episode with you sometime down the road. Really get into like the nutrition and fitness, because I know a lot of folks would be interested in what you've learned, and just have an
Yeah.
episode specific to that. But my last question, Ian, for you today: what does the word authentic mean to you? What is your personal definition of being, what is you being authentic these days look like? What is it?
For me, being authentic is just living my true life, the life that makes me happy. And authentic to me is knowing what my core values are and sticking to them, and not letting myself be led down the path either by people because I think this will make people like me, or because I think people expect a certain thing of me. I'm just I am genuinely now, for the first time, living my true authentic self, and finding out the things that I love, that I'm into, that I enjoy. Um, and yeah, and it all came from my sobriety, and restudying with the fitness, which I would love to do a second one on that, because
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
nearly finished my level 3 personal training. I teach
Nice.
exercise classes now,
Oh,
and
no
I'm
way.
also studying nutrition. So yeah, so it's
Brilliant.
not just became a big, like, it's became a huge passion.
Yeah. It's like your lifestyle. It's what you're now,
Definitely,
you're at
yeah.
that stage where you can now teach, you're now teaching with, which is great.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So when you're saying the core values, what I just want to go a little bit deeper with the authenticity side of things. What are your core values that you have come up with, or like what really resonate with you over these last 18 months? Because certainly there's been, it's like anything else. You try it on, you're like, maybe not this one. It's like trying on some clothes or a hat or something, right? It's like, okay, this is why I like this, but it's not quite me. Like what, or did they just come to you where you're just like, you know what, like what are your core values? If you were to say like
Yeah,
three,
they do just come to me. But I was just laughing because when you say, like, there's so many different things that I've tried,
right, right.
that I just wanted to kind of experience within, to see, does this work for me? And
Yeah.
again, I still do drop into the meetings. I'm just not as into it because it just didn't fit with me. I also tried to get into crystals; they weren't for me, but I tried them.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so
Right.
I've tried like a lot of different things, but I would say, for me, my core values is to just be a good person that I believe to be a good person, to have that honesty and transparency. So I spent a long time lying, which didn't sit right with me. So now I am 100% honest, and I think it's important. when you are in recovery, that you need to be honest with yourself and with those around you. So I'd definitely say honesty.
I love it. I love it. And man, it's like, you can really see how that came out of everything that you've been through, right from childhood, where you had this like people pleasing thing, right? Where you're not taking care of your own needs and your own self. And now it's like, yeah, I could see where you would have landed on that, where it's just like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to be just honest to myself, honest to what I need, and then be very protective of it. So dude, what a wonderful story. Thanks so much for coming on. You did fantastic. If this is your first podcast, I really hope it blossoms into many, many more for you, because you're very well spoken, self-aware, just like a very good guest, good storyteller, and just honest, man. I love the honesty, and there's going to be so much that resonates with people that listen to this. So thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I was very nervous, so
didn't even show. I mean, I don't know you that well, so I don't know if nervous from not nervous, but it didn't come off nervous to me. So you did great, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.